President Trump makes his first official foreign visit, leaving behind a growing political storm. He's arrived in Saudi Arabia as a new leak appears to shed more light on his team's alleged links with Russia. Also on the programme, after a huge turnout, Iran's moderate president defeats his hardline opponent to win a second term in office. And no longer a bridesmaid. Pippa gets married as the young royals turn out in force for the Society Wedding of the Year.
This is ITV News with Jonathan Hill.
Good evening. President Trump has tonight announced a $350 billion trade deal with Saudi Arabia after flying there on his first foreign trip since taking office. But as he flew out of Washington, he left behind yet another growing political storm. Fresh allegations suggest investigators may be closing in on possible ties between his campaign team and Russia. That's denied, but he's also said to have described the man he sacked as FBI director as a nut. Ronke Phillips has more.
The president and his wife Melania emerged from Air Force One into the blazing heat of the Saudi summer and the warmest of welcomes.
Very happy to see you.
And later, when it was announced America had signed its biggest ever arms and trade deal with Saudi Arabia of more than $350 billion, the US president made it clear he was delighted.
Hundreds of billions of dollars of investments into the United States and jobs, jobs, jobs.
But the deal was not enough to switch attention away from his troubles back home. Instead, the turmoil has increased. As a dozen horses flanked the presidential limousine making its way to the royal court in Riyadh, fresh questions were being asked about Mr. Trump's motives for firing the director of the FBI, James Comey, who'd been investigating alleged links between the president's campaign team and Russia. According to the New York Times, when the president met the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, he said, "I just fired the head of the FBI. He was crazy, a real nut job." He then apparently added that the sacking had eased great pressure on him. The president looked amused as he was welcomed into the Saudi court with a tribute to his Scottish heritage. And by the time he was given the nation's highest civilian honour, reports had emerged that one of his closest advisers could become a significant person of interest in the investigation into the alleged links with Moscow. There was no denial, only this response to the allegation from the US Secretary of State, who's also on the trip.
I do not have any information or knowledge regarding the person of interest that's been referenced.
The president's core supporters are fighting back, as this pro-Trump fundraising video makes clear. The media and the establishment being blamed for the fallout. But the issue is refusing to go away, and Mr. Trump may find he has little to smile about when the former head of the FBI gives his account of events soon after this first foreign tour comes to an end. Ronke Phillips, ITV News.
Let's get reaction now from our Washington correspondent. Robert, yet more allegations. Just how damaging is this for Mr. Trump?
Well, look, despite the pomp and ceremony you saw there in Saudi Arabia, it is increasingly clear here that that the president is in a world of political and possibly legal trouble back home. Even a consensus view emerging, this is not sustainable. These comments, this description that Trump gave of Comey to the Russians in the Oval Office, describing the former FBI director as a nut job, is causing real shock here. I spoke to one former very senior counterintelligence official who said that it was shocking that Trump would say that it's a stab in the back to the FBI and the CIA, and almost unbelievable in his words that he said it to the Russians of all people. Remember that in maybe about 2 weeks, James Comey himself will come here to Capitol Hill and give testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee. Remember too that Comey has the motive, the ammunition and the credibility to do real damage to the Trump presidency.
Robert Moore, thank you very much. A huge turnout has re-elected Iran's moderate president Hassan Rouhani for a second term. He said it shows voters had rejected extremism, and as our international affairs editor Raghi Omar reports from Tehran, it increases his chances of continuing to build bridges with the West.
It was a victory that many of them hoped for, but feared would never happen. This evening, hundreds of reformist President Hassan Rouhani supporters celebrated in central Tehran. There were similar such scenes in other major cities across Iran, all of them sensing his re-election represents a new beginning. In the end, it was a landslide for President Rouhani. The announcement came this afternoon. President Rouhani had won with 56% of the vote, a majority of 8 million votes. It represents a stunning victory for Iran's moderate reformist movement under President Rouhani. In his first reaction this evening, he said Iran had never been prouder and that his government wanted to expand relations with the outside world. He will try, but faces one massive obstacle in particular.
That seems very difficult with Trump in power in Washington. I mean, this is an American administration which doesn't even want to negotiate and talk to Iran.
But President Rouhani's victory has considerable implications within Iran and for its largely young population. President Rouhani now has a mandate not just to improve relations with the outside world, but to protect and, if he can, expand social freedoms in Iran.
We have freedom for women and other ways, but unfortunately, I have to say it's not accomplished yet.
But you hope it will with another 4 years?
Yes, yes.
When the official news said that Mr. Rouhani is the future president of Iran, everybody seemed happy and say, hooray, Mr. Rouhani.
Many Western governments have also begun to say well done. Tonight, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson sent his congratulations. Raghi Omar, ITV News, Tehran.
Here, branded cigarette packets are being phased out this weekend. All cigarettes and rolling tobacco must now be sold in generic packaging with graphic health warnings on them. Packs of 10 are also banned by the new rules intended to stop young people from taking up smoking. And more than a quarter of flights into the UK were delayed last year. According to Which magazine, Canadian airline Air Transat was the worst, with 45% of its flights more than 15 minutes late. KLM was the best performer, with just 12% late flights. Theresa May was forced to defend her manifesto proposals on social care while out canvassing on the doorsteps today. One voter told the Conservative leader she was concerned about plans to include the value of homes when assessing the cost of care. Well, our political correspondent Angus Walker joins us now. Angus, tell us more.
Well, we are at a turning point in the campaign because the manifestos are out. Now, no one reads these manifestos cover to cover avidly, but you do start to see at this stage what has happened to spring out from the pages and actually stick in people's minds. It does seem that this proposal to include the value of your home if you're assessing the cost of elderly care for those who need care at home is getting a reaction. Labour calling it a dementia tax. And Theresa May on the doorstep today asked by one voter about the cost of that care.
I was a little bit unnerved, I have to say, about the whole care changes, but I haven't looked into it in detail.
What we want to make sure is that whether somebody has to go into a home or has to be looked after in their home, that they're, first of all, that they don't have to sell their house during their lifetime or their partner's lifetime.
Labour clearly sensing a weakness here, trying to destabilise Theresa May's so-called strong and stable strategy and calling the manifesto an attack on the generations. Here's what Jeremy Corbyn had to say today.
An attack on our elderly, on their social care, a threat to their pensions by taking away the triple lock, an attack on our children by removing the limited free school meals that are available in our primary schools at the present time.
So when it comes to this manifesto proposal on the cost of care for the elderly, it does have that sense of a self-inflicted wound.
Angus Walker, thank you very much indeed. And finally, there was a wedding today in a quiet English village, but this was no small affair. The world's media turned out in force to see Pippa Middleton, sister of the Duchess of Cambridge, marry her fiancé, James Matthews. Also invited, well, sort of, was our royal editor, Chris Shipp. Chris.
Well, my invitation extended about as far as this barrier just down from the church up there. But of course, Pippa Middleton became almost as famous as her royal sister when she played that supporting role at the royal wedding in 2011. So here today earlier there was a crowd of photographers and well-wishers here not just for Pippa Middleton but for members of the royal family, and in particular two very small and very cute members of the royal family. Across the country there were thousands of weddings today, but none more extravagant and none as closely watched as this one, because the bride is the sister of a future queen, and that meant there was no ordinary guest list to see the moment Pippa Middleton was given away by her father. The Duchess of Cambridge arrived moments before Prince George and Princess Charlotte among the page boys and bridesmaids. Also here to watch Pippa tie the knot, Princes William and Harry, and groom James Matthews' younger brother Spencer, a star of reality TV. Little wonder this small Berkshire village attracted a big crowd, photographers and well-wishers alike.
It's now started raining and you just told me you saw a tiny glimpse.
A tiny glimpse. Yes, it was worth it, wasn't it, Rosie?
We just saw Pippa getting out of the car, the little ones getting out of the car.
It's a Giles Deakin dress.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Now, I've just shown you a picture from my phone because you actually couldn't see it from here.
I couldn't, no, it's sad,
so was it worth it?
Disappointing. I live in Atlanta in the States.
Right.
Yeah.
You haven't come especially from the United States for this, surely?
Sort of planned around it, yes,
Really?
yes.
Right. There were, however, some regular features about this far from regular wedding, like the guests who turned up after the bride. But when the bride and groom appeared, there was plenty for the cameras to see. A happy Mr. and Mrs. Matthews, and a little prince ahead of them throwing confetti on the ground. Prince Harry did not bring his girlfriend, actress Meghan Markle, although she is expected to join him this evening. The newlyweds left for that evening reception in an open-top classic car. Tonight's royal and non-royal guests will party under a specially constructed glass marquee at the Middleton family home. There will be an air display of RAF Spitfires. Not a royal wedding then, but at times it came very close. Chris Shipp, ITV News, Berkshire.
Quite an afternoon. And that is it. I'll be back with the latest news. That's at 11:15. Hope you can join me for that. Until then, have a very good evening. From all the team here, bye-bye.